Would it not be nice to have some environment to move around in? Because this world is boring. It should be something like this. And that, my friends, is what we're going to add today. Let's dive into today's episode. Before we start, this channel have a Discord server where you can discuss and ask questions about the tutorials of this channel. Or maybe you just want to swing by and say hello. We will also use GitHub throughout this tutorial. There you can check the most recent code, but also code from previous episodes. That comes in handy when something works differently on your side compared to what you see in the episode. And for the people that want to go the extra mile to support the channel, there is a Buy Me a Coffee page and also a membership option on YouTube with some basic perks. With that being said, let's get back to the episode. Last episode was a short one, and this recap will be even shorter. We started out by changing our view from portrait mode to landscape mode. That will be a lot easier to play on rather than the alternative. We also talked about the types of flags we were setting to remove the navigation bar, status bar and also the title bar. And that was pretty much it. Now, let's add some graphics to our game. We can't do much graphics work without any graphics. So first up is to grab our tileset floor, which is what we're going to use. And as we can see, we have 8 biomes, if you will. And I already have one prepared here, which I'm gonna drag and drop in our drawable folder, like we did with a spreadsheet for player and so on. I also changed the name so it matches the rules for Android and make sure it goes in the correct folder, drawable, and not drawable v24 or something else. So that looks all good. We're just gonna click OK. And now we can use this new tileset floor image or sprite sheet, if you will. For our player, we have a package named entities and we have the enum game characters. And we're gonna do an enum for our tiles as well. So in our package here, main package, we're gonna create a new package and we're gonna call it environments. And we can just click enter. And in this package, we will of course deal with the tileset floor or sprites for the environments, if you will. And maybe objects that is not interactive, just for show. It looks nice to have them. It's very hard to know where we will put all of these types of images and sprite sheets. It has to come as a natural process of making the game. But for now, we need some way of dealing with what we have here, and that is the tile set for the floors we're going to use to start with. So in this package, we're going to create a new class. Right click new Java class, but we're gonna select the enum here and we're gonna call it floor. I think that's a good name. And we can minimize this project view. The first type in here I think could be outside, because it's outside floor, actually ground, but let's stick with floor and specify it being outside. And in here we'll specify of course a resource ID, just like we do there. So r.drawable.tileset floor. And we also need to specify how many tiles this sprite sheet have in width and as well as height, because different sprite sheets of the same type, like outside, indoors, maybe special environments, a cave, what have you, may have different amount of tiles in both width and height. So to make our math work out, we need to specify it when we create a new type here. So for outside, we have 22 in tiles in width and 26 tiles in height. And we're gonna finish that off. And of course, then we need a constructor. So floor, like so. We need an integer res ID. We need an integer tiles in width, int tiles in height. Our floor enum will have a couple of methods, or a method as of now, that is the same as the one here in game characters, as well as this options one. So what we can do to avoid coding it twice is to go to our project, and in our helpers package, we're going to create a new package, so a package in the helpers package. And we're going to call it interfaces. Done. And we're gonna create a new Java class, select interface, and we're gonna call this one bitmap methods, like so. And in this one, we can minimize that again. We're gonna copy this one, the options, or we can remove it actually from game characters. Place it in here and remove private because it's a interface. And we're gonna take this get scaled bitmap as well and place it in here. And we don't want it to be private, we actually want it to be default, which allows us to specify a method and its components, or rather what it's going to do, and not just declare it. We actually got some code in here. And what we're going to do next is to just go to our game characters, because we've got an error here, and say implements bitmap methods, done. And now we have access to the options and also this method in our game characters. And we go to our floor and we do the same. Implements bitmap methods. And now we have access to them in here as well. So we don't have to have two enums with two methods that are identical. We just can keep it in our interface, and we're gonna add more enums. So all we have to do then, if we want to use the methods in here, is just to implement this bitmap methods interface. And if we need more methods to be shared by all of these enums, we just add them in this interface. Code it once, use it several times. All right, in our floor enum, we will need to store our sprites in a one-dimensional array, because if we want to select a specific tile, we want to say the ID of that tile. So we're just gonna store them in a private bitmap one-dimensional array, and we're gonna call them sprites. Now we need to do a little copy here. We're gonna take this options in scaled equals false and put it at top here. Then we can check here, just as a reference, we need to have the sprite sheet to iterate through the entire image, which makes sense. So let's just copy this. We're gonna change it up a little bit. First of all, we have no sprite sheet, but we can store a temporary by just saying bitmap sprite sheet. So now we can use it. And since we're gonna store this in a one-dimensional array, we're not gonna use it like this. And we're gonna have to change this. So j is less than tiles in height, and this one is the x, so tiles in width. And we can remove that dot length. So j looks right, and we're gonna add some brackets here. And then we need to calculate the index where we're gonna place the sprite for each iteration. So int index is equal to j times tiles in width plus I. So index at start is gonna be 0 times 22, which is 0, because 0 times something is always 0, plus 0. So index 0 is going to be the very first image in our get scaled bitmap. So we can comment that, but we can take this and say sprites index, because we figured out the index, is equal to get scaled bitmap is the same. It's still 16 in size, so I, j, and 16 times 16. Sounds about right. And we can remove that. So now we have stored all those sprites in this sprites array, which is good. We're gonna test it soon, but so far it looks correct. Then of course we need a public bitmap get sprite, but we don't need an X and Y position. We just want to get the ID of this sprite and return that image, which corresponds with the ID. So int ID, and then remove or enter there, return sprites ID, like so. So the ID is also the index in the array, which makes it a lot easier for us to know which sprite is which. I also have this image that's going to be uploaded to GitHub with this project when I'm done, So if you want to know which tile is what when it comes to the ID, you can use this image as a reference. And of course, if you want to build your own level later, you can look at this sprite sheet or this image and pick out what tile you want where. So I'm just using it for reference to help people understand it better. Next up is to create a class that can hold the environment and also draw it for us. So let's call that a map. And the map contains the information about the, well, the map and how it's supposed to look. So let's go to our project folder here. And in our environments, the new package, we also create a new class, normal class, and we're going to call it a map. But don't call it map because there's several things in Java that's called map, so that can easily become an error because you import the wrong thing. So we're just going to call it game map. Simple as that. And we can close down this view. And this class is going to be very simple as of now. It needs to store the world, which tile should go where, and also be able to draw it. So we're going to store the world in a 2D integer array. So x and y. So private int 2D array sprite IDs. And this two-dimensional array is going to store the world in IDs. And we're going to start drawing from the top left, go the full width of the entire array, and then go to next, and then a row, and then jump down again, and so on. Just like you do when you read text. You go from the top left, go all the way to the right, then you jump down to the next line, and so on and so on. And that's how our tiles are going to get drawn. And we're going to give this 2D array some values a little bit later, but now we just want to code out the class. And we also need a constructor to, well, set this 2D array. So public gameMap integer 2D sprite IDs. This dot sprite IDs equals sprite IDs. All right. Then we need a public void draw canvas C. And of course, we need to import the canvas class. And what we need to do now is to iterate through this array, which is going to be for int j equals 0, j is less than sprite IDs dot length, j plus plus. Then for int I equals 0, I is less than sprite IDs, j dot length, I plus plus. And we can skip brackets and just go c dot draw bitmap. And now we need to get a sprite that corresponds with that IDs. And that we get from floor dot outside dot get sprite and sprite IDs j I. And then of course the x and y position, which is going to be I for x times, we need to think here, our base size for sprites are 16. And then we multiply it in our bith method here by 6. So it should be 16, oops, wrong class. So it should be 16 times 6. So that we're gonna be 96. And then of course the same for j. And we're gonna add some constant values for this, so we don't have to calculate it every time we touch it. We should just say size later. But for now, we just wanna test it out so everything works. And of course, the paint is null. We don't need a paint for this. That looks correct. I, yeah. Yeah, that looks correct. Now we of course want to test if we can draw a map or environment or something on our actual phone. So let's go to our project folder here and go to our game panel. And then we can close this down because it takes up so much space. And scroll up here. There's a lot of code that we're going to remove later, but for now, let's just keep it there. And up here we can have a comment for testing map. And then we have a temporary map. So private game map, test map. And we can come down here to our constructor, and under our skeleton position here we can create a integer 2D array, and we're going to call it test array with IDs. is equal to new integer, and we're gonna set it to 10 in width and 10, or 10 in height and 10 in width. And now we just need to fill it with values. And the simplest is to do a nested for loop. So in j equals test array with IDs.length, j++. And of course we could do an for int I here as well. But since we just want to fill it with the same value, we can just say array.fill, or arrays.fill. And we can pass in, we can import that as well. Test array with IDs, j, and then a value 10. Oh, we have an error here because, okay, I clearly jumped a step. J equals 0, j is less than. That looks a lot better. That shouldn't give us any errors. And we go over our entire array, and for each subarray, or the second array, we put all those values in that array to 10. And now we can just say test map is equal to new game map, and then pass in test array with IDs. Just like that. And then we're going to take this test map and let's draw it at the very start. We don't want to draw it above our touch event, then the circle disappears. We don't want to draw it above our player, etc. So at the very start, test map.draw and then canvas. Let's give this a try. And that didn't go so well. Launch succeeded and it didn't start. Okay. Let's jump down here. Exception in initializations error caused by null point exception. Huh? Let's take a look here. Sprites. Oh, we never set the size to. We never set the size of our sprites array. Well, that makes sense. Alright, so our sprites equals new bitmap, and the size is going to be tiles in height times tiles in width. And I think that is going to work better. And we got started. We're not seeing anything because I didn't realize that ID 10 is transparent. So if we go to our game panel and set the value to, let's go 0. So the first tile in the entire sprite atlas. Let's give this a try. That looks better. We got some visuals. So yeah, how about that? So now we have some sort of environment. Well, not much for an environment, but it's a step in the right direction. And the size of this test array is going to be the size of the actual map, so the world, if you will. And I think we're going to keep it like that. The bigger the map, the bigger, well, the world is going to be where you are. So the size of this array is going to be the size of the world here. So if we say 10 and only 2 in x, or in 2 in width, and start it again, we have 10 and 2. And we can flip it, of course, 10 and 20. Or 2 and 20, my bad. Can I have 2, and then zoop, all the way over here. Maybe a few more steps. So yeah, this is looking good. Now we can build our sprite array, or our map, if you will. Before we continue with the actual map that I have planned or already made out, we need to add constants. If you go to our game map, for example, here we have 2 values that should be constants. In our floor, we have 16, which is the default size. That should also be a constant. So let's go to our project and helpers, game constants, and let's add another class here. So public static final class, and we're gonna call this sprites or sprite. And in here we're gonna have a couple of public static final int default size equals 16. Then we have scale multiplier equals 6, which is what we're multiplying to get the images bigger when we create them, because 16 by 16 would be tiny on our screen. And then of course actual size, which is equal to default size times scale multiplier. And now all we need to do is to go around and exchange these values with what we're actually using. So let's start here, game characters. 16 is game constants dot sprite dot default size. We can minimize that for a second and just copy that, paste, and for height as well. Perfect. Then we can go to floor and look here, we have the same there and same there. All right, what else? Game map, maybe? Yes, but here is the actual size, so size is what we're using here. And anything else? Nope. Helpers, bitmap methods. Here we have the scale multiplier. Then we can copy this. Scale multiplier. All right. Game constants. No, that was the one we added. Game panel. No, I don't think we use any constant of those we just added anywhere here. No, I think that's good. All right, next part. All right. Let's see if we can make this world a little bit more interesting. And lucky enough, I have already made a 2D array for this. I'm gonna copy it from my notes here. And I'm gonna remove this one. So this is a 2 integer, we can remove that also. So this is a 2D integer array with a lot of different values. And all of these values are IDs on the sprite sheet. And the position where all of these integers are. So this is the first one, well, index 0, index 1, index 2, etc. is gonna correspond with an image or a position on the map. So this is the first tile, the second tile, third tile, etc, etc. And this is the last tile. So let's see how this array then looks. And don't forget to remove this test array with this new array. And let's run it. It looks a little bit more interesting. We got some grass here and a path, or some path, and then we have some sandy stuff here, etc. So it's looking a little bit more interesting. And I left this image that I mentioned at the start of the video, or start-ish of the video, where you can change the values however you want to get the level or the map that you want. If you want to change the size of this array, go ahead, be my guest. But we currently can't move around the map more than whatever the screen is showing. So for now, this is as big, or the minimum size to cover the entire screen, which is 20 times 18. So yeah, but you can play around, switch the values however you see fit. So let's set that to a 0, 0, 0, and run it again. And as you can see, we have now switched these 3 tiles, because they correspond with that one. Perfect. Let's go back, because this looks a little bit better. So yeah, this is looking really good. Alright, that is all for today. Finally we got some more graphics in our game, and there sure is going to be more. Now, if you enjoyed the episode, subscribe and like the video. There's more videos like this to come. Until then, my friends, take care now and have a wonderful day. Bye.